Want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on the show? Or do you have a story that you'd like to submit for one of our Listener Stories episodes? You can get in touch with the show via the website at www.hauntedukpodcast.com, on Instagram at hauntedukpodcast, on X at hauntedukpod, or you can email us at contactus@hauntedukpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook and TikTok. And if you want to support the show, you can do it via either Patreon or Ko-fi. Both platforms have exactly the same content, but work in slightly different ways. One of the advantages of Patreon is its sleek user interface, but if you want to avoid those pesky additional charges Apple, Google, and Patreon apply to your subscription, then why not give Ko-fi a try? Simply open a browser window and type ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast. That's Ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast, and you'll soon find us. Whichever platform you choose, we're sure you'll enjoy the bonus content. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the episode. Mum and Dad met at the Blake House on Baldwin Street in Bargoed in 1965, soon after she left school. They dated for 3 years and married at the Cardiff Register Office in April 1969. After they were married, Mum and Dad didn't get a place of their own. They continued to live at Gladstone Villa with my grandparents. Mum told me that nothing paranormal occurred until after I was born in 1969, and that the activity started in the attic. This is episode 60, part 4 of the Haunted UK podcast, and it's time for us to delve once again into your listener stories. Listener stories. We never ever get tired of receiving and reading your submissions. Marie and I constantly count ourselves very lucky to have such a wonderful group of amazing listeners, and you never fail to amaze us with your tales of the strange and unusual, the creepy and bizarre, the dark and frightening. We have yet another fantastic collection of stories here, which I have no doubt you'll all enjoy. So with that said, let's get started and cross the threshold of an old Welsh house as we face the haunting of Gladstone Villa and other listener stories. Our first story comes from Rebecca in Lincolnshire, who encountered a long-departed pilot while attending an event with her family. Good evening. I'm an avid listener of your podcast and would like to share my experience as a teenager at East Kirkby airfield in Lincolnshire. I grew up in Donanook, a small area on the east coast in Lincolnshire. The area had been and still is used as a bombing range by the UK Air Force, so aeroplanes were a huge part of my life growing up. My father worked at the site that managed the flights and pilots of the aircraft that visited the area from around the globe. For my father's birthday, my stepmother had arranged for us all to go to East Kirkby airfield and watch my father go on a taxi run in the famous Lancaster bomber, the Just Jane, Arriving at the airfield, it was a normal day. The weather was nice and there were lots of people present. Before the taxi ride was due to begin, people were able to go and sit in the aircraft and have pictures taken by family members on the outside. The aircraft was still in the hangar at this point. My father was sitting in the rear gun turret, posing for a picture that I was taking of him, when I turned to look at the Hurricane, a smaller one-man aircraft that was parked in the same hangar, just behind the Just Jane. A man was sitting in the aircraft wearing a full vintage RAF uniform waving at me. I waved back and turned back to my father to take the picture. "Who are you waving at?" my father asked. I turned to point at the man in the Hurricane, but he'd gone. The taxi ride had begun and my father was inside the Just Jane and was being taxied up and down the runway. I stood with my stepmother watching the aircraft move away. I noticed that one of the 4 Rolls-Royce engines was not working as it should and could see the blades stuttering every now and then. I mentioned this to my stepmother, but we both concluded that the aircraft was old and it would be due to wear. Once the taxi run had finished, my father returned and was drenched in sweat. He described sharing the ride with an elderly man who used to be a pilot in World War II. He was very emotional being back in the aircraft he once flew, and he reminisced about all of his friends that he'd lost. A few weeks later, the TV show Most Haunted visited the airfield with psychic medium Derek Okora. Throughout the show, he kept mentioning the engine on Just Jane not working properly, but that wasn't the most shocking part. He was told by his spirit guide of a pilot in a Hurricane that had died in flight. He was from Canada. He was trying to land his Hurricane aircraft at East Kirkby, but was told there was no room for him to land. He ran out of fuel a mile away and crashed into a field, dying on impact. A picture of him flashed up on the TV screen, and it was the man that was waving at me from the Hurricane in the hangar. I haven't been back to East Kirkby since that day. I now have children of my own and would like to take them, but I'm still a little bit apprehensive as to what I will see. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Love the podcast. Kind regards, Rebecca Hodgson. Rebecca kindly provided an update to her story. Here is what she shared. Good evening, Steve. Thank you for allowing me to fact-check this. The facts are, according to Most Haunted historian, as follows. The pilot Norman Watt crashed in a nearby field on July 1, 1943, due to false information given from the control tower. He wasn't found until 1989, the year I was born, where he was still in the cockpit of the plane. Also, the plane was a Spitfire, not a Hurricane. After seeing the picture of him again on YouTube video, I can't help but feel so overwhelmingly sorry for this man. All he wanted was an apology for what happened to him. I intend to revisit East Kirkby soon and give him the apology he deserves. I hope after that, he can find peace. Rebecca went on to share another experience, this time involving her young son, who was in a dire situation. Yet the help she received may have come from the other side. As for my other experience, it would need some backstory. This may require a listener discretion warning, as it involves babies being poorly and operations. I've known my husband Stuart for many years now. We used to get the school bus together, and our parents used to go to the same school together. His mother, as a community carer, used to look after my mother's grandmother, and his grandmother used to work for my father's grandparents on our family farm. So you could say our lives were intertwined before we knew each other, or even existed. Stuart's maternal grandfather had passed away before we became a couple, but he told me about him quite early on. telling tales of his mischievous attitude towards the end of his life. Grandad Dennis used to have a nasty habit of tricking his nurses. When in hospital and on a heart monitor, he would remove the sensor to set off an alarm, bringing all the nurses running to his bedside. He would laugh about this, and the nurses would chuckle at his antics. As his condition deteriorated over the years, he was sent home as there was nothing further they could do for him. He died in the house we live in now, and in the room that our son Finley now calls his bedroom. We had our first son, Finley, when I was 21. It was a completely normal pregnancy and birth, so we had no clue as to what would happen in the few months after. When Finley was 18 months old, he became incredibly ill. He was having tremors down one side of his small body and was extremely lethargic. Naturally, we took him to our local A&E in Louth. There, the doctors struggled to treat him, so we were moved to the larger hospital in the area, the Diana, Princess of Wales Hospital, Grimsby. There, they did various tests and treatments and determined that Finley had a problem with his heart. At the young age we both were, my now husband and I were beside ourselves with worry. This was our first and only child at the time, and to see him so helpless and sick was deeply traumatizing. We were moved via ambulance to Leeds General Infirmary. Along the way, Finley's condition deteriorated, and the paramedics worked to keep him alive. At this time, I was alone in the ambulance with him, helplessly watching on as my child's life was hanging in the balance. On arrival at Leeds, the paediatric cardiologist examined Finley and determined that he had a narrowing of his main artery, the aorta. He would require emergency surgery to correct this, as his other organs were shutting down because of the lack of blood flow and oxygen. Alongside this, he was also suffering from pneumonia. We waited 4 days through cancelled surgeries and being pushed back for other emergencies that came into the hospital while we were there. On the 5th day, it looked like it would go ahead. So, we took Finley into the shower and gave him his bath with the special pre-op body wash to prevent MRSA. After this shower, we settled in, on his bed, and began to watch Top Gear on his TV. Stuart had gone down to the hospital cafe to get a coffee. The show had nearly finished when 4 nurses and 3 ward doctors came running to our door shouting, "What's wrong? Is everything okay with us?" I was perplexed. "Yeah, everything's fine," I said. "Would you like to watch Top Gear with us?" gesturing to the spare chair. They explained that someone had pulled the red emergency cord that hung in the bathroom. I confirmed with them that I had not been in there for nearly an hour, and they were confused as to why that had happened. They reset the alarm and left. When he came back, I told Stuart what had happened, and he immediately said, "It was Grandad. He's saying he has him, and it's going to be okay." I'm not sure if Stuart had a feeling about this, but I did have a sense of calm even during such an event. The next morning, Finley went down for his operation. We were told it would be 6 hours, and they would phone me on my mobile if anything happened. After 3 hours, we received a phone call. "He's out," exclaimed the nurse. I was confused and anxious, thinking that something had gone wrong. "Is he okay?" I asked. She replied, "Yes. We had to resedate him because he was trying to wake up as he was being wheeled out of the theatre, but it went well." I looked to Stuart, who had heard what the nurse had said. "Grandad made sure he was okay," he said. "That's what happened last night. He was letting us know that he has him, and he will keep him safe." A wave of reassurance came over me as we made our way to the recovery ward. From there, Finley came on in leaps and bounds. A week following his operation, we were home, on Mother's Day of all days, and he began talking more and being able to stand and walk. He's now 14. He has a 5-year-old brother, and I couldn't be prouder of the young man he has become. He has autism and a permanent heart deformation, but he is capable of so much. Finley attends a local mainstream school and is planning to go to college to pursue a career in teaching history. I hope that you enjoyed this experience. It makes me feel that loved ones never truly leave us and will be there when we need them the most. Please keep up the amazing podcast. I've been binging the episodes from the very beginning. Thank you so much. Kind regards, Rebecca. Our next story comes to us from Laura, who had a disturbing experience on what should have been a lovely, relaxing holiday in Mallorca, Spain. Hello there, Steve. Thanks for your wonderful podcast. It keeps me company whilst I wrap orders for my online shop. I want to submit one of my experiences. I haven't had many, but since being a child, I feel like I pick up on, and am sensitive to, energy and have often felt guided by signs and feelings. The experience I want to tell you about occurred in 2015 in Mallorca, Spain on holiday. My husband and I had taken a holiday to a family apartment, but we decided to spend a few days in the mountains of Mallorca near the town of Dia. So we booked a B&B for the night. The room was part of an old Spanish finca country house that was built into the rock. It was beautifully renovated, and our room formed part of the cave that would have been storage under the house. I didn't feel anything untoward in the room until I got into bed. My husband fell asleep almost instantly, but I was struggling to drop off as every time I closed my eyes, I had the most intense vision of how the room looked back in the 1900s. The room had straw on the floor. There were racks of wine lining the walls. I could feel the heat of the day coming in and the smell of animals. The creepiest part was this. As I could see the room as it was, there was a man sitting on a rattan farmhouse-style chair in the middle of the room. He was wearing black trousers and a white peasant-style shirt. In his hands was a shotgun. The shotgun was pointed into his mouth. The man had his eyes closed and was rocking silently on the chair as if he was building up the courage to pull the trigger. Every time I closed my eyes, this scene would reappear in my mind's eye. I looked over to my husband and he was fast asleep. I couldn't understand what was going on. Eventually, after tossing and turning and trying to get the scene out of my head unsuccessfully, I got up and turned on the air conditioning. As soon as I did this, the energy in the room changed, and when I closed my eyes again, the scene in my mind simply melted away. Was this residue energy from a horrible suicide event? My imagination? Or even a time slip? I really don't know, but I was glad I only had booked one night. I really enjoy the show. Keep the stories coming. They're so fascinating. All the best, Laura. Now we hear from listener Sheila, who shares the story of an experience her father had and could never forget while working overnight at a museum. Hi, my name is Sheila. My dad once told me a story from when he used to work as a night guard at a museum. When my dad worked at the museum called Beamish Hall in Newcastle, there was a story about the ghost of Bobby Shafter who went to sea. The story behind the ghost was that there was a woman who was in love with Bobby Shafter, and when he went away to sea, she went down to the cellar and somehow locked herself into an old-fashioned trunk and died. The woman was dressed in grey. My dad patrolled the grounds at night time, so it was dark. There was a field over the road that never had anything on it. No trees, shrubs or livestock. As he came around the front of the building, the field came into view, and in it was a female figure dressed in grey. He stopped to watch this figure, then heard a workmate driving into the site with his headlights full beam, which obviously distracted him. My dad glanced back towards the field, but the figure was gone with nowhere to hide. Was this the ghost of the woman who was in love with Bobby Shafter? Keep up the amazing work. Love the podcast. Sheila. What a spooky story this is, and we would love to know, has anyone else seen a lady in grey at Beamish Hall in Newcastle? If so, please email in and tell us. We would love to know more about this tragic woman. Sheila kindly sent over another story, and here is what she shared. I thought I would send another story I was once told. This is the story of someone I once knew, and it occurred when she was still in school. For the purpose of this story, I will call her Sophie, which isn't her real name. Sophie attended a school in the 1960s. One particular day, the fire alarm was set off due to a fire in one of the departments. Everyone had gone outside, as was protocol for the fire procedure, and they were all on the schoolyard away from the building, waiting for the fire service to arrive. Whilst waiting for the fireman, one of Sophie's friends, we'll call her Laura, realised her brother wasn't with his class. So, knowing which classroom he was supposed to be in, she ran into the building to try and find him. Unfortunately, both Laura and her brother perished in the fire. Many months passed, and the school was kept running. Then one day, Sophie fell down a set of stairs at school and broke her arm. The strange thing was, Sophie reported that when she fell down the stairs, she felt lots of people falling on top of her. Yet when she turned around to look over her shoulder, there was no one there. Could it have been the siblings who had passed away months earlier? I have one other story to share with you to go with the previous two. My friend's mum told me this story. Let's call her Laurie. Laurie had 3 kids, 2 boys who were 13 and 14, and a daughter who was 7 at the time. They lived in a 3-story house along with her partner, who we'll call Adam. Laurie's partner was at work, so she and the children were alone at the house. One night, she made sure the 3 kids were asleep, and then afterwards she was downstairs on the phone to Adam. Laurie heard someone getting up and presumed it was one of the kids going to use the bathroom. So she thought nothing of it and carried on with her phone conversation with Adam, but then quickly noticed the footsteps. They'd carried on, and that they were now coming down the stairs. Laurie figured one of the kids was coming down to get a drink.
You okay?
Laurie turned to look at the staircase and saw 3 ghostly figures standing on the steps. At first she thought it was her kids, but quickly realised it wasn't them. The building they lived in was quite old, so perhaps she encountered some of its previous residents. I've got one last story, which isn't quite a haunting, but I would love you to include it. I lost my dad to cancer in 2016, and a few years after his death, I got some signs that he was still around, including a dream I had about him where I was in St. John's Market in Liverpool, wandering around the shops, and he was there following me. Another time, about 3 years ago, I could smell tobacco smoke, the kind that comes from the cigarettes that you rolled yourself. These were the type of cigarettes my dad would smoke. At the start of this year, I was seeing things out of the corner of my eye. Me being me, I thought it was one of my children, but it wasn't. I thought I had seen someone going downstairs, but my children were in bed and my partner was working the late shift and wouldn't be home until 10:15. When this happened, I was under the impression it was my dad. So I simply said, "Oh, hi Dad." Every now and then I smell rolling tobacco smoke and think of him. I would love to hear your opinion on this, and maybe the listeners' opinions too. Thank you. Sheila. Thank you so much, Sheila, for sharing these experiences. I can't even begin to imagine how terrifying it was for Laurie to see children that weren't her children, and then to realize they were apparitions just staring at her at the bottom of the stairs. And what a special connection you have with your dad. It was wonderful to start with his story and to close with him trying to make contact with you. We now hear from Christopher, whose experiences as a child appear to also be occurring with his own children over 2 decades later. And let me tell you, it's very unusual and out of this world. Hi there, big fan of the show. I've been thinking for a while now about my experiences growing up and to this very day. I believe my experiences may be linked to extraterrestrial beings, although they could be guardian angels or something of the sort. I honestly know me and my children have been visited. Unfortunately, my wife tells me not to talk about our experiences due to her job, but I honestly think she has experienced something other than the black saucer we saw hovering in our garden, only she refuses to tell me. When I was around 5 years old, we were driving back through the Cheshire countryside on a cold February evening. Me, my dad, and my 2 older brothers were going to pick up my second eldest brother, Matthew, from his friend's birthday party. After picking him up and fighting over the party bag to try and get a sweet, we started heading towards home.
That's mine! Give it!
Suddenly, my brother Jonathan noticed an orange light at the car window.
What's that?
The light seemed to be following us down the country road. We stared in awe at this little light. We asked our dad what it was, and he said it was only a Chinese lantern. So we simply ignored it and carried on with our journey. When we got back, my brothers decided to have a sleepover in Matthew's room. I was desperate to have a sleepover in my brother's room because my 2 older brothers were in there as well. They were going to stay up and watch cartoons like Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on VHS, which we'd rented out from our local Timewise, and eat snacks and sweets and maybe listen to a bit of Oasis on cassette. Unfortunately, my brother told me a hard no.
No!
Which caused me to start to cry, and my mum came upstairs to see what was going on. As I ran to my mum, time slowed right down. It felt like it froze completely. In front of my brother's bedroom door, standing right in front of him, was a diamond white and gold light that was growing larger. I felt static electricity flow through my body. As I turned back to my mum, time sped up again and the light disappeared. My brother suddenly said I could have a sleepover in his room, but I was so petrified by what I'd just encountered that I didn't want to go. I stayed with my mum and dad that night. Fast forward 2 years, when I was 7 years old, I went to stay at my grandparents' house for the weekend. I went to bed at roughly 9 p.m. but couldn't sleep, most likely due to the fact that I wasn't in my own home and bed. I had the bedroom lights and landing light on because I was afraid of the dark. I was trying to get comfortable and go to sleep, but needed to use the bathroom. As I got out of bed, the bright diamond light appeared again, once again right in front of the doorway. The light got bigger as I moved closer to it, and the static electricity flowed through my body again. But this time, I saw a female figure within that diamond white light, which was roughly 1.5 meters away from me. She spoke in my head.
Do not be afraid.
I ran through the light, opened the door, and ran straight downstairs, sobbing to my grandparents, who rang my parents to come and collect me. Fast forward 25 years later, I now have a family, a wife and 2 beautiful girls. One morning at around 6:30 a.m., I was having breakfast with my family when my 4-year-old said, "Dad, what's that in the sky?" My wife and I looked out of our patio doors and peeked up at the sky. To our astonishment, there was a black saucer-shaped object hovering in the sky. It was about the length of a bus and roughly 400 or 500 meters above the ground. I ran outside with my phone to take photos and videos. What happened next frustrated me. My phone, which had over 50% battery, died. I told my wife to grab her phone, but hers had died too. Another thing I noticed was the eerie silence. My house is situated near woodland, and typically you can hear birds singing morning and evening, but on this morning, there wasn't a single chirp or song. It was an eerie silence that I struggled to describe. The craft was slowly moving up and down when it suddenly vanished into the clouds. As soon as it disappeared, there was an enormous roar of sound from the birds, as if every bird had woken up at once. It was quite literally deafening. I still talk to my daughter about this today. She's now 8 years old and remembers it very well. My wife, however, doesn't like to talk about it, especially in public settings, as she is a teacher. My daughter has also said she's seen an egg-eyed man in her room. She now sleeps with the light on. She doesn't know what an alien looks like, but she described it as smaller than her, with freckly white skin and black egg-shaped eyes. I asked her when she saw him, but she goes quiet and doesn't tell me. She just says, "That's why I sleep with the light on now." My younger daughter, who is 4, had also been wetting the bed at night, saying there was a little boy in her room. This happened just before my eldest started sleeping with the light on. I have a terrible feeling that they are being taken at night. I have obviously not told my wife because she would think I'm going mad. Thankfully, the bedwetting has now stopped, and my eldest is sleeping without the main light on, just a night light. But I am honestly sure this won't be the last I hear of this. I needed to tell someone what was going on to get it off my chest, because every time I mention it, people think I'm crazy. But I'm not. This is what actually happened, and I'm sure it won't be the last time for me or my family. Kind regards, Christopher. Thank you so much for details of these intriguing otherworldly experiences which seem to punctuate your life, and now with your young family, which understandably must cause some anxiety. Please get in touch with us if anything further happens. We would also be very interested to hear from listeners who have experienced anything similar. Our next listener story comes to us from America and features stories of paranormal experiences as well as extensive theories and ideas about various paranormal phenomena, including time slips and hauntings. I've been moved to share some ideas and theories with you about several different phenomena. I'm a lifelong experiencer of the paranormal, starting with my first ghost sighting at the age of 3. In addition to that, I have spent considerable time with a paranormal research group and have studied the characteristics of paranormal phenomena in detail. Despite my own experiences and studying with this group, I would have to call myself a skeptical believer. Because though I am apparently a sensitive and have been told that I tend to unintentionally act as a battery, I have an analytical nature and tend to question everything that I see. Because of this, the experiences I've had that I trust the most are the ones where I have had witnesses. I'll start with time slips, because that's where I first started thinking of sharing these ideas and theories with you. Having discovered your podcast, I began at the oldest and started working my way forward, and I've been enjoying it very much. Thank you. Now, regarding time slips, before my father died, I was speaking with a man who came into my place of employment. The man was, shall we say, a sort of dabbler in physics and philosophy. I was speaking with this man about what could happen after death, because my father was sadly nearing his end. This man spoke of ideas in physics that were recent at the time. He explained the theory that time is fluid and non-linear when seen outside the boundaries of corporeal reality. According to these theories, and from what I've learned about time slips, apparently time slips are possible within a locale inside corporeal reality, and even, from reading the story of Doug and his father in Time Slips Part 2, sometimes within the boundaries of one single house. This man said that if that were true, a spirit that wanted to reincarnate, or simply travel, could go backward or forward in time. I thought this was an intriguing idea, and when I got home, I told my father about it as he was very interested in that kind of thing too. About a week after he died, I had a very vivid dream in which he appeared to me. My dreams are usually only in very muted colors, but this was a color brighter than life. My father looked directly into my eyes, which is also not a characteristic of people in my dreams. Because of this, I believe that it really was him contacting me, as he had said that he would. I asked him if he was all right, and he said he was feeling wonderful. I asked him if he could come back and see me again, and if so, if that would likely become less frequent over time. He looked at me and winked and said, "You know that's not really a limitation." He stood looking at me for a while, and we just smiled at each other. He then turned around and walked away from me, at which point I woke up. He's come back a couple of times, which has mainly translated into a feeling of his presence, accompanied by the smell of toasted pound cake, which was his favorite snack. I laughed the first time it happened and said, "Oh Dad, you would pick that as your manifestation." I mainly mention this because I think that temporal fluidity could be a possible factor in time slips. That and the time bubble theory. I have heard both and read that time bubbles are closer together in certain locales, and that the walls of the bubbles are thinner as well, which could explain the greater frequency of occurrences in Kent or on Bold Street in Liverpool, for example. I had similar experiences when I lived in San Francisco, but they were very brief, and I couldn't be sure whether I had truly experienced a time slip or not. Because of this, I hope you will not quote me on this. Anyway, because of the possibility of either of these phenomena, as well as the possibility of parallel universes caused by divergences in timelines, I think that it is possible that the occurrence of time slips is far more complicated than people tend to suppose, and that it would be very easy for speculation to fall far off the mark in terms of trying to determine the actual cause in any given location. I personally tend to speculate that time slips or dimension slips are quite possibly responsible for a large number of disappearances, especially those when absolutely no vestiges of the person's past known presence are found. For example, what if Bryce Laspisa fell through a dimensional portal as his car went off the road? Of course, that doesn't explain his peculiar behavior prior to his disappearance, unless he somehow had some sort of premonition about what was going to happen to him. Then there's the disappearance of Paula Jean Weldon and the missing 411. One thing that I did note about the latter is that the characteristics of these are not uniform as to what kinds of vestiges, if any, are found. For example, none at all versus torn clothing versus clothing and belongings appearing in small batches over time. Aaron Hedges was by far the most bizarre of these disappearances. Of course, parallel dimensions and portals are also theorized as an alternative origin for aliens, which would go a long way towards explaining a lot of things about the behaviors of both alien beings and of their craft. The second class of phenomena I wanted to make some observations about are hauntings. I have heard it observed that with stone tape hauntings, or place memory hauntings if you prefer, the hallmark is that any entities involved do not tend to interact with live people and do not make eye contact. I was thinking in particular about Working with the Unknown episode. I noted that you referred to the possibility of a stone tape haunting in this case, but I thought this unlikely, given that it seemed clear that the entities involved in this haunting were very definitely interacting with the live humans involved. Likewise for the haunting of the George Inn Hotel. One thing that has always fascinated me is the interplay between hauntings and poltergeist activity. There are certainly hauntings that have no associated poltergeist phenomenon, and I have seen and heard mention of poltergeist activity where there were no associated ghosts, at least not ghosts of human beings. And some poltergeist activity has seemed to be downright demonic in origin. My next thoughts are regarding doppelgangers, and I personally think that doppelgangers could have a lot of different origins. Perhaps, as you mentioned, they could be a kind of separating off of the dark sides of a person's nature. One thing that I was thinking of when I listened to the doppelgangers episode, though, was about my interaction with my father. What if the spirit of a departed person came back in time to warn that person? Then I was thinking about the woman on the beach in that episode who thought she saw her daughter drowning in the sea. This vision of her child could have possibly been her child's doppelganger. But for a child that young, it seems to be unlikely that she would at the age of 4 be giving off a projection of her shadow side that would be trying to kill her mother. Perhaps, given that we have seen many instances of ghosts who can change their form to appear as a person to someone that person knows, this could have been some kind of evil ghost trying to draw her out to a death by drowning. When you consider how many people die by drowning, it's not so surprising that one might encounter a ghost at the seaside. Therefore, it seems like there are at least a few possible origins of doppelgangers, and any one of these could be the case in a given instance. It seems very possible to me that the doppelgangers Percy Shelley and Abraham Lincoln saw were backward projections of their own ghosts trying to warn them to change what they plan to do. Other ideas I feel are worthy of mention have to do with energy sources for haunting spirits. As you and others featured on your podcast have noted, ghosts tend to manifest more powerfully when they use an energy source as a battery. The most obvious of these is of course a person, particularly an adolescent, because they do tend to have very intense energy. Another physical phenomenon or set of phenomena worth noting, though, are piezoelectric effects. It has been noted that piezoelectricity was possibly used by ancient Britons as a source of energy by seers or possibly people undergoing initiations. I highly recommend the book Places of Power by Paul Devereux, and since it was published in the UK, it should be easily enough to get your hands on as a copy. There are various phenomena associated with certain geological formations which are well known. Some of these are purely physical phenomena like the Brown Mountain Lights in North Carolina or the Marfa Lights outside of Marfa, Texas. When I was 50, right after my father died, my mother and I moved into a house that was situated next to a spring that emerged from between a couple of slabs of granite. This was in the Appalachian Mountains, and most of the bedrock of the Appalachians is granitic in formation, and granite has a high quartz content. It's common to have springs emerging where there are cracks between two slabs or large pieces of granite. When pieces of granite rub together, even by minute amounts, this creates pressure and generates piezoelectricity. I've heard it theorized by paranormal investigators of a non-skeptical leaning that spirits can manifest by drawing on piezoelectricity, as in many cases they can manifest by drawing on house current, thunderstorms, etc. In addition, if you have two faces of granite rubbing together and there is water flowing between them, as we all know, water is a strong conductor of electricity, so it can in fact conduct that piezoelectricity outwards from the fault, all the way to the surface. There was an intense level of paranormal manifestations in this house during the time that I lived there, as well as strange things seen in the valleys we lived in. Our neighbour across the road said that in certain circumstances she would see orbs floating in the air. I have a couple of photographs that I took of orbs in which faces were clearly visible when they were enlarged, though the skeptic in me must acknowledge the possibility that the faces seen there are nothing but perceptions caused by pareidolia. I could write a small essay on the type and level of phenomena that I've experienced during the year that I was living there. With warm regards, Rylin. Please do send in that essay, Rylin. We have really enjoyed your insights into the phenomena featured in some of our episodes, and we would love to hear more about your time slip episode in San Francisco. Please get in touch again and let us know. And now, we have come to the very last and lead story of the episode. Here we hear from Andrew as he tells us about his haunted childhood home in Wales, a home with a tragic past, and in recent years it became a hotel, now ominously closed and all boarded up. You may soon ask yourselves, is it any wonder why? So ready yourself as we cross the threshold of a very strange place and bear witness to the haunting of Gladstone Villa. Gladstone Villa was a large 3-story property that stood ominously on Cardiff Road in the former mining town of Bargoed, which is in the Caerphilly county borough of the South Wales Valley, 17 miles away from Cardiff. My family were my maternal grandparents, Bill and Rita Higgs, and my parents, Caroline and Douglas Dexter. Mum and Dad met at the Blake House on Baldwin Street in Bargoed in 1965, soon after she left school. They dated for 3 years and married at the Cardiff Register Office in April of 1969. Mum and Dad didn't get a place of their own. They continued to live at Gladstone Villa with my grandparents. Mum told me that nothing paranormal occurred until after I was born in 1969, and that the activity started in the attic. I was a baby at the time, so I can't remember when it all began, but she told me that she and the family heard what sounded like someone jumping from the attic down to the landing. Thinking that someone was trying to break in, my family dashed upstairs to see what was going on. They reached the top of the stairs to find nobody there. Yet strangely, the hatch to the attic was open. From that point on, they experienced daily activity, which eventually occupied itself in the main bedroom where my grandparents slept. This would include footsteps heard every evening and occasionally during the day. They would turn the volume of the TV down to hear the footsteps more clearly as they walked slowly above us. On one occasion, the pillow in my cot was torn in half. Thankfully, I wasn't in my cot at the time. Graham Jones was a local curate who was at St Gladys Church in Bargoed. It got to the point where he was contacted to bless the Gladstone Villa property. Yet after a few short prayers, he duly left, but before he went, he warned the family starkly, "Watch the baby." After this, things were quiet for a while, but then the incidents started up again. The same old routine on a daily basis. Footsteps in the master bedroom, minor poltergeist activity, and the rare sighting. As I got older, I saw the poltergeist activity with my own eyes. I saw brown coaxial cables being pulled from the back of the television, but thankfully no damage was done. We also regularly had lights going off and on. Off and on. My mother once saw the solid, full figure of a monk standing behind the sofa as my grandmother Rita was reading a book.
Oh my God!
My mum was wrong.
Grandad Bill and I were watching television, so only my mother saw it. She later described it in detail as a short man with a brown habit and a hood over his head, which prevented her from seeing his face. Eventually, it got so bad that my mother, Nana Rita, and I slept on sofas downstairs with the lights on. This activity at the property actually convinced a skeptic by the name of Ivy France. She didn't believe us when we told her it was haunted, checking the main bedroom and saying, "It's the vibration from the traffic outside causing it," with her thick Welsh accent. She eventually witnessed an incident firsthand and contacted a medium she knew, John Matthews. John Matthews arrived and asked the family questions before he started. He then began to challenge the spirit by tapping the ceiling. To get a reaction, sure enough, it promptly responded by knocking back at him. John went into a trance to make contact with the entity, and though he wasn't successful in getting a name, he did confirm the obvious, stating, "There is definitely a presence here, an earthbound spirit with unfinished business, something it didn't accomplish in life." Before he left, he covered the bedroom with flour and sealed the room. He came back the next day to find foot impressions in the flour. Far too much went on to describe here, but you can do the research into this case to learn more. Bargoed police became involved, claiming my father was playing pranks. We left in June of 1978. The McBurney family took over and my childhood home was converted into the Reds Park Hotel. The staff said they heard things, especially in room 5. One member of the staff saw a bride in white, which made no sense to me at the time. Upon doing more research, I found some interesting details from Bargoed Library. Gladstone Villa was named after Prime Minister William Gladstone. There was a monastery close by that went back some 400 years. My grandfather Bill said a man murdered his wife at the property, which may explain the bride in white seen by the staff at Reds. My mother and Grandad Bill said they heard a baby crying in the bedroom when they lived there, which also made no sense at the time. However, during my research, I discovered a 4-month-old baby had died there in 1924. His name was Elvin Kimmiott, and he is buried at Bedwellty Cemetery. This was a genuine experience. It left a profound effect on us. My mother became a nervous wreck. My father Douglas had a series of breakdowns and eventually died in 1991 at the age of just 44. Thank you. Andrew Dexter. Andrew, this is quite the story, and we would love to do a deep dive on these events. It feels like we're just getting a tip of the iceberg of what went on for you and your poor family there. What a fascinating case, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. And that, dear listeners, is where we'll be finishing this episode. But don't worry, because we still have one more Listener Stories episode where we have someone very special helping us out to deliver an incredible grand finale story to you. In the meantime, what's your step to avoid loopholes in time? Be wary of anywhere where granite stones might clash, unleashing energy you just can't contain. Look up, but not too carefully, for who knows what you might spot swirling around high up, frightening the birds, strangling them of their song. And don't look down either, especially there at the bottom of the stairs, where goodness knows what you might see. But instead, you can look forward, Look forward to the next episode, which will appear very soon, and look forward to the next season and to the next batch of listener stories. And that's because the next person writing in, typing up a high-octane, inexplicable, terrifying event, could be you.